cannot exceed 21 million.
The hardest money that has ever been invented.
I also made the case for owning Bitcoin. The quintessence of scarcity premium.
Scarcity premium.
It's literally the only large tradable asset in the world that has a known fixed maximum supply. By its design, the total quantity of Bitcoins cannot exceed 21 million.
Cannot exceed 21 million.
Bitcoin is the hardest money that has ever been invented.
If you don't have my private key, you cannot spend my Bitcoin, period. And this is the power of Bitcoin.
It's the first time we figured out how to create true property that you can take possession of with full custodial rights.
Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking in Bits. We back with another one. We have a really exciting conversation here with our good friend Tom, UTXO Slayer for all you guys over in the Twitter universe of things. But before we introduce Tom, we're going to do our typical shout out to the friends of the show here. Kev, who we got?
We got The Wild Hustle, boosted 2,000 sats. Thank you.
Shout out to The Wild Hustle. Yep.
Yeah, he says, I remember listening to the pod while riding the free bus to get to work. The vibes are needed for this bull market. Man, that's a pleb right there.
Man, I was on the bus yesterday. No.
I've been on the bus before. I know what that bus life is about.
This is gonna be a random story about a bus, but the first time I found out about a Zune, do you guys remember the Microsoft Zune?
Yeah, dude.
The first time I found out about a Zune was some dude on the bus who was basically like flexing over my MP3 player and was like, oh, check out this Halo 3 edition Zune camoed. And I was like, what is
Dude,
this?
that thing's probably worth like $1,000 now. That sounds super rare.
He's super put me on. And from, this is Lincoln Street back in Worcester, from Lincoln Street all the way to downtown, bus number 26, wow, Hustle, I'm with you. I understand the bus system. Bus number 26, I basically got put onto a Microsoft Zune. I went ahead and bought one probably like 3 weeks later, and then they became obsolete like 6 months later. But my whole point is fascinating things can happen on the bus, the Wild Hustle. But I appreciate the love. I appreciate you being a friend of the show, a long-time listener, and you're always good with them sats, so I appreciate you. And we're definitely trying to keep the vibes high for the show, man. I mean, we need it out here. There's a lot of toxic nonsense going on here. Actually, I would just say, and maybe Tom will talk about this a little bit later, it's kind of like repeated shit. Mm-hmm. It's just a new cycle. Yeah. Different flavor of shit. But anyways, Wild Hustle, we appreciate you. Who's next, Kev?
Bowtied Groundhog. Man, we got some good names this week. Boosted 1,000 sats. Sahil is the best get on zero / all-in ambassadors we have. That's probably Sahil's name right there, boosting himself. Bowtied Groundhog. Love it.
Listen, I'm actually going to like, how do I send Bowtie 500 sats here? Just because that name is fire.
I mean, maybe we got to bring Oscar on the show and have him tell you how to use the app.
We had Oscar on the show.
I know. We got to bring him back.
Yeah, we got to bring him back. Let me just do the little heart. I think that's only 10 sats. Sorry, Bowtie. I'll figure out a way to get you.
You got a return on this. You got 1% return.
Yeah, I wanted to give him a 50% return on that because Bowtied Groundhog is absolutely
just
fire.
Hit the like button like 100 times.
I think you can do that too, but then it trips it up.
Oh, wow.
That's lightning. Lightning
Talk to Oscar about that.
All right, who else we got here?
We got at user 739294073488852 boosted 100 sats. Hey man, pick a username.
I think I know who this is too.
They say great show. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. I agree with Kev. I'll give you a tutorial. You go over to your little profile section here in the bottom right. You tap on your name and I think you can switch it to whatever you want. Something like Bowtie Groundhog would probably be a good direction to take on Fountain. But yeah, those are the boosters. Remember, y'all, you get a call out on the show if you actually boost. But we did get a ton of streamers. Shout out to all of y'all. Those sats are just as valuable as the boosting sats, but we want to hear from y'all. We want to hear commentary. We want to hear what you like, what you don't like, any takes, like the Wild Hustle, maybe some value that you received from the show where, sometime in your life or when you were listening to some previous episodes, go ahead and boost on Fountain or any of your favorite podcasting 2.0 platforms. There's too many of them nowadays to even list. And Kev, I don't even want to stoke the fire of that guy that was killing us on what Value for Value was a few months ago. So
yeah, I remember that.
I forgot his name, but
it's just a whole bunch of arguing about stuff.
He was just basically saying like we don't know shit about podcasting 2.0.
We were there were some disagreements about historical events, and it was just like it's one of those arguments that kind of didn't. Number one, it occurred across a medium of boosts and episodes, and it was just like a month-long like conversation we're having between these comments, and it was just kind of like, man, we don't need to go there. The point is, or the I guess the thing to draw from it is value for value is here. We obviously find value in it. We like it. We're going to use it. We may not be, the arbiter of a library of historical events that led to value for value, but we have the general gist.
Yeah. Kevin was just too nice. I was right. He was wrong. No,
I didn't care enough to find out. I was just like, whatever, man. It's here. Like, we're using it. Who cares?
It's sort of like if you're talking to somebody about World War II and you're like, oh, it ended with like Hiroshima. And then he's like, no. And actually, and then he'll just give you like another battle like 3 years before. And then it's like, oh, okay. Like, we're both right, but...
Yeah,
I'm right.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It actually ended.
You're literally splitting hairs at that point. Yeah.
So just giving Tom some context. That's kind of what it was. But hey, he boosted some sats to be wrong or to be semi-right, and I appreciate that love as well. It works out.
We appreciate the conversation.
But either way, let's get to our guest. We got Tom Honzik here. Tom, is that doxing you?
No, it's good.
It's touchy nowadays, man. Like I don't even know what to call people anymore, especially on microphones. I don't know if they want to be filmed. I don't know if they want, I don't know. Well, I know you can see, you gave concession to be here and at least be on the audio form, but either way, I just doxed you. Tom Honzik, what's going on, my good sir?
Welcome.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, my name's out there, so I don't mind. But yeah, to introduce myself, I'm on the custody support team at Unchained, and been looking forward to this one.
You appreciate that, man. You want to know what my favorite line from Tom is that I hear all the time? Is telling clients or telling people that a hardware wallet is actually used like incorrectly, right? The term hardware wallet is used incorrectly.
The misnomer?
Yeah.
I love that. Can we get to the listeners to hear what that is?
Yeah, let's hear the Tom Honzik rundown of the hardware wallet.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate term to catch on, to say the least. It confuses a lot of people because it paints the picture that their Bitcoin is inside a device, which it's not. Everybody's Bitcoin is in the same place on the blockchain, right? So, what I do at Unchained, a big part of my job is concierge onboardings. So people are signing up to have me help them walk through setting up an Unchained vault, and that often involves setting up their keys as well, so their hardware wallets. But that is very confusing to a lot of people. It's much better to think of it as a key, especially when you get to multi-sig. And so some people have talked about renaming them to signing devices or key managers. I think that is better, but it's just the term is so firmly entrenched in the industry and the culture. So,
yeah, no, I hear that. I mean, there's a ton of value that you give to the clients. I don't want to make it seem like it's just that one, but like, boy, where was Tom when I got into Bitcoin?
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think the people that are speaking to Tom understand the grind was real, say 2-3 years ago.
When I first found out about cold storage, to me, it sounded like as when I first read the words on paper of like how it, or on my phone screen or wherever I read it, of like the concept of that, like, and this was, 2019, I think, when I was learning about how Bitcoin actually worked, and that it wasn't just some digital value being zipped around, and like it's actually like tied to some, it's like anchored in something, and it has some basis in existence. And when I was like, I would just always see these articles where like, oh, Bitcoin whale sends $2 billion of Bitcoin for $3. And I'm like, what does this even mean? What? So can someone translate? Like, how does, and then I'm like reading and I see they're noting the addresses in the article and it's moving from here to here. And I'm like, what is this address stuff? And then it says something about it moved, from one cold storage location to another. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is this? And starting to, kind of Google and more intentionally, I guess edify myself on like how Bitcoin worked. And just that learning that Bitcoin actually lives in these addresses on the chain of data, really, essentially, and not in these devices, was just like that mind-blowing meme of like, holy crap, like this works in a way that I didn't even think anything could work this way. Like, this is a totally new concept. And then finally, ultimately, how in the hell do I start doing cold storage and like get my stuff out of, you know, this hot wallet that is my Coinbase account, essentially.
It's messy.
And
you needed a time.
I really did.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, otherwise you just spend 6 months listening to podcasts and eventually you understand. But
that was my journey.
Yeah. But that,
I was about to ask that. I was like, who was Tom's Tom?
Yeah. Who was Tom's Tom?
Was it just random podcast and just doing your own?
Yeah, I remember it took me a long time to figure out that Bitcoin wallets don't hold Bitcoin, right? That doesn't make any sense for someone that's using...
My wallet doesn't have any money in it?
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like something that holds keys, and yeah, that's not how most people are thinking about it, so...
Yeah, I think that you alluded to this, but like I think when multi-sig comes in, I think it starts to make a little bit more sense to like use the word keys.
It has to, because that's a question that I've heard sometimes on onboardings is like the Unchained model, right, is 3 keys, Unchained holds 1, the client holds 2, and sometimes they ask like, well, which one of these things is holding my Bitcoin? Are they each holding half? And it's like, no. These are 2 out of 3 keys that are protecting your whole Bitcoin stack that you move in your vault.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times I've heard people say, "Oh, I have half a Bitcoin on a Trezor." I'm like, okay, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you're saying.
Right.
But
yeah.
In the back of my mind, my little Jiminy Cricket, grammatical correctness is like, no, you don't. You don't have Bitcoin on a Trezor.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
Yeah, well, that's one of the benefits of obviously being around what I call the smartest people in Bitcoin, but just knowing Tom personally is just like he's been able to simplify a lot of these concepts for me, especially consolidations, which is another part that people don't even really give 2 damns about, but it's going to be a problem. And it's been a benefit to me. It's like, okay, I don't need to spend, you've literally outsourced all that information for me to spend 80 hours listening to a podcast and still maybe not getting it, because that can happen. People don't know how to explain things right. But yeah, just knowing Tom for the X amount of time I've known Tom, it's like, oh, I got this thing kind of figured out. So like, I mean, we're going to get into your writing. That's the real destination I want to send to people here, because the way not only Tom thinks about Bitcoin, but the way Tom explains it, I think it's second to none. I mean, I don't know everybody in the industry, right? So like, it's easy for me to say that, but like in his writing, you can tell that he can simplify complex things. And just to loop back to how we got here, in his conversations with clients, he can simplify very complex things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a superpower, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I try my best to learn technical concepts, and there's a ton of people in Bitcoin that know a lot more than I do on the technical side, but I'm trying to bridge that gap, because a lot of those technical people aren't necessarily the best at explaining it to someone who's new, and so I'm trying to repackage information, and people have told me that they like my efforts, so I'm going to keep going.
I like your efforts, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if analogy is the right word, but I think it's sort of like good design or good UI, right? Like you could get something that's very complex and like in an application standpoint, and if you build a good UI and have some good design, it becomes dramatically easier for you to navigate that. So like, I think you are that bridge there, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean, we're here at the Bitcoin Commons. We see events all the time. There's definitely extremely technical people, but like the way we're going to onboard the next million, as they like to say, or the next 10 million or whatever, it's not going to be with the technical talk. It's probably going to put people to sleep. It's probably what it's going to do, unfortunately. So yeah.
Yeah, we're at the stage of adoption here where all of the people who would have sought out Bitcoin and got there on their own have basically done it. You know, like anybody who was looking for an alternative to the dollar, anybody who was looking to store their wealth in something that wouldn't decay rapidly, anybody who was looking for, censorship-resistant financial transactions, they've found it. I mean, Bitcoin's been around 15 years. If you're still a stick in the mud about it, well, you got a rough life ahead of you. But for those who have, gotten with the program and seen where the puck is going and are preparing themselves for a stable financial future, they're already here. They've already done the hard work. They've already bashed their head against the wall of things that don't make sense, cold storage, all these things that at one point were obstacles. They've surmounted them, and they're now on the other side just progressing ever so steadily through their Bitcoin journey and building on that. And so, there will be a point where you haven't done this minimum amount of trying to understand. You're not going to get it, and it's just going to hurt you more and keep you from. I mean, essentially, it's kind of funny because you have a point in here that is reminiscent of this, but like you're perpetually missing the boat. Like it's just getting further and further away from you.
Yeah, it's go ahead, talk.
And you're not trying to hop in the rowboat to catch up at all. You're just like, this Bitcoin thing is dumb, and I haven't done the work, and I'm just gonna get mad at the world about it.
Yeah. I think the gondola analogy is that the
gondola.
That was
the
like
perpetual gondola.
I was like, this is just epic right here.
Beautiful.
It's just the way it is. It's the way it is. But I don't want to get into the article yet. I kind of want to go like in the timeline of like, all right, so we know what Tom is currently doing, right? But like, how did Tom get into Bitcoin, right? And like, you had to grow some type of conviction in order to get to the point where you wanted to learn as much about it. Like, let's try to go in that order and then eventually get to the article, which is Bitcoin maximalism, right? So like, it's like the peak of what you can get to. So what's your Bitcoin journey or the story?
Yeah, so I was in grade school during the financial crisis in 2008. And so our teachers at the time, at least at my school, were doing their best to explain what was going on. And the takeaway was that it's a mess, right?
Did they start with Building 7? And they were like, first we had to destroy all the records, and then we could have a financial crisis.
Tinfoil hat guy over here.
Is that,
Not my teachers. But yeah, probably some out there. But anyways, and also even from a young age, I remember like talking to my father about like saving money and learning that like if you just try to earn money and save it, like those dollars that you're saving are going to decline in value. I just remember feeling that was, the world shouldn't work like that. There's something wrong with that, right? So those kind of, maybe those two things started getting me interested in things like gold and silver growing up, looking for other ways to save for the future. I took a while to get to Bitcoin for a lot of the similar reasons that a lot of people do. It just, it's a digital token. How can this have value and stuff like that? But eventually started listening to podcasts, taking it seriously and very seriously, and to the point where I am now, where it's like mostly my life. So
yeah, that's base. So like learning that money erodes was basically like before Bitcoin, your dad was already teaching you that stuff and you were understanding that stuff.
Yeah. And it just seemed like there's got to be a better way. So, found gold, and then, you realize even that they can keep mining more of it. There's more of it in outer space and asteroids and stuff. And it's like, come on, can't we just have something that's just scarce that we can save in? And that's what Satoshi did.
That's fascinating because that's probably one of the things I learned later, right? Like I didn't understand like the money problem, right? I was just like, well, my thing is I couldn't make enough money. And I guess that's a feature of fiat, not necessarily a bug. Like you can't make enough to keep up with shit. But yeah, that was like very late in my life. Like I didn't get that type of tutelage or that type of like lesson. I didn't even care about gold besides gold chains and rapper shit, right? So it didn't make any sense to me, but interesting. So do you recall like your first like interaction with picking up Bitcoin, basically, if that makes sense? Like your first purchase of Bitcoin or your first acquisition of Bitcoin or?
Yeah, it was, just a lot like other people, just hopping on something like Coinbase and, like begrudgingly giving up the KYC and stuff. It's like, and then, slowly learning that you want to take it off of the exchange and bring it into self-custody and stuff, learning how to do that, and not fall for yield scams and that kind of thing. So.
Gotcha. For the listeners, we got Shane in the house. I'm not going to ask you if I'm doxing you because you've been on the show before. So that's on you. Let me put your mic up. Your mic's not even on. Good, sir. Just to catch up, Shane, we're just going through Tom's point of getting into Bitcoin and getting to here. Kev, feel free to jump in at any point in time. I'm just trying to go through the timeline. All right, Tom. So you got to now the point where you know enough about Bitcoin or convicted enough about Bitcoin to start educating people on Bitcoin. Is that how the step go, or was it?
Well, I was just kind of trying to learn more about it on my own and play around with things. So I started running my own Bitcoin node, and then got into like a Lightning node and trying to route payments and earn transaction fees that way. And then I was like, man, all my free time is spent on Bitcoin. It'd be awesome if I could actually work in the industry. And so applied to Unchained, and they appreciated the fact that I had, ran a Lightning node and took the initiative to practice using Bitcoin in those types of ways. And yeah, that's how I got into Unchained.
When you say running a Lightning node, I mean, I feel like people like myself who just run a regular, Bitcoin Core setup, whether that's through, just vanilla Bitcoin Core, or you have something like Umbrel or MyNode, or something like that. Like, for the listeners who may not have, dipped their toe into the lake of fire that is Lightning, and managing a Lightning node, like, what's a day in the life look like for that?
Well, I would say probably, unless things have changed, I would not recommend it unless you really want to spend a lot of time and you're pretty technical with command line type of stuff, because it is quite a bit more complicated to manage safely. Because you actually, when you run a Lightning node and you're routing payments, you basically have Bitcoin in a hot wallet, and you're interacting with a lot of other people, and just how Lightning works is more complicated. So, I stopped running a Lightning node just to put my mind on other kind of base layer on-chain stuff. But yeah, it's interesting because you're trying to like move liquidity from channel to channel in a way that earns you fees, and I'm sure it's gotten better since I was doing it with more automation. But it's tricky.
I just remember seeing a lot of your posts in the chat, just saying all the different things that you did with your node, or things that, tests that you had run, or, data that you had pulled and monitoring that you'd been doing. And it just looked like a lot of work. It sounded like a lot of work. And
yeah, it was.
Yeah, and it definitely was a lot of work.
I think it's still the case, man. Lightning, non-custodial Lightning is not fun.
Yeah, like doing it all yourself without any help, like no liquidity service providers or...
Yeah, and even understanding that whole like ball game, like especially the liquidity service providers, which is relatively a newer thing. I think actually Shane could speak on that as well. But I don't know. Like, it still seems like... What do you think about the LSPs?
I think that's probably the way that most people are going to interact with Lightning. I do want to point out that, like, in order to use Lightning, you don't have to do what I was doing, which was like trying to earn fees and route other people's payments. You can set up a Lightning node and just have a channel with someone that you frequently transact with, and that's pretty straightforward to create that and maintain that. And then also,
so instead of like using something like Phoenix or Moon Wallet or whatever, semi-custodial solution, what you're saying is you got your own Lightning node with your own Lightning funds at home, and then you're managing in that maybe from your mobile phone or web terminal.
Yeah, but also you bring up stuff like Phoenix, like that's a great way to use Lightning as well.
Pay somebody else to do all the work, and then you just enjoy the convenience of the payments.
Right. And Mutiny, shout out to them. They're on the other side of this wall. So.
Yes.
So is that non-custodial still?
Which
Phoenix?
One? Phoenix, it's
like they open up a channel for you.
They're still involved. Like, you get a backup capability and stuff, but there's some degree of which they still have to exist, I think.
If you...
Can you get the mic closer, Shane?
There we go. Phoenix, I don't think you can once you stop using Phoenix, you basically have to close everything and go to on-chain. So it is self-custodial, but then your Lightning stuff just disappears. Not your funds. Your funds obviously become on-chain, but like essentially you can't use Lightning without Phoenix.
I see.
Whereas
just like a partnership, collaborative sort of thing.
Yeah, running and it's 1%, which I don't know. I guess depends. I think it's pretty easy if you do spend and receive, then you can connect to like Wallet of Satoshi's node. You have all outbound liquidity. But if you're spending a lot, you can spend that outbound liquidity. Then you can connect to a LSP and you can get some inbound liquidity from another LSP. So I don't know. It's all trade-offs. I mean, LSPs are probably the most convenient way to use Bitcoin while also being non-custodial and not paying crazy high like fees. I don't know what crazy high is really, but I don't know. Mutiny does that with Voltage LSP. Before, when Block Tank was first running, it was pretty cheap. I don't know what their rates are now, but I don't know. It's all trade-offs. Lightning kind of sucks.
Yeah, do you still use Tom? Do you still use Lightning nowadays, or just more like custodial Lightning? I use Strike and stuff like that, so I'm definitely using.
Yeah, the extent to which I use Lightning is just with one of those simple apps on my phone to send and receive. So
are you optimistic about the future of it?
Yeah, but in a different way than I used to be. Like, I think a lot of people, when I was getting into Lightning, and maybe even still today, they were kind of having this idea that Lightning was the scaling solution for Bitcoin, and that, period, right? That's what we need. But then now I think people are starting to realize that Lightning is more of a connective tissue for other things like Fediments or Liquid and these other ways to use Bitcoin on subsequent layers. And so, I think it's going to continue to be used for a very long time.
I got real bearish on Lightning when Nifty Nay was talking about, she had mentioned that when the fees got super high, that channels that didn't have a fee rate that was higher than the normal priority fee rate at that time started force closing channels on their own because the fee rate was just all out of whack. So in that specific scenario, it's like, oh, you have a Lightning channel to save on fees, but then if the on-chain really blows up, then you might have this this thing happen where your channels are now trying to close because it's just the logic is making that happen. So it's like, I don't know, it's still so dependent on chain that it's hard for like the normal person. I mean, it's really great for businesses, like instant settlement between businesses that often like buy and sell from each other. That's great, but kind of for the average person, it's not the best solution.
Damn. I can't think of another way of like getting somebody to not want to try Bitcoin than like
no, just
this conversation.
No. I get what I'm saying, but like, if Lightning is like supposedly like the faster way of transacting, like people always want like the faster car, or right. So it's like if somebody's entry point into Bitcoin is Lightning, and then you just hear everything that Shane just said, it's like, I don't want to have anything to do with that, right? Yeah. Like it's just complex, confusing, not stable.
I think what's happened is like the whole of the Bitcoin community like went out, got drunk at a bar, and was like celebrating that. Oh yeah, Lightning, and now we got the hangover, and we're like, oh wait, like it's not working like I thought. This isn't like I thought it would be. There's a lot more to it.
I just think it would always work if you just understand that you're gonna do it custodially. Mm-hmm. Like I have no problem using it whatsoever as like my debit card.
That seems to be how it's trending. Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like if it's custodial, it's just like, Coinbase is custodial and Binance Pay is custodial, mm-hmm. So it's like you don't necessarily need Lightning except for like now it's just business to business using Lightning, mm-hmm. and you're just on their platform, which is okay, but
and we're right back to full circle where we were, a couple weeks ago, where it's like now you're only trusting the custodian with enough that you would like maybe a week or two worth of income, and everything else is, locked away deep in cold storage.
It's the only way that's going to work.
With that being said, though, I mean, you can still do it self-custodially. I mean, you can.
Sure.
It just costs a little bit more, and it's
more
like
maintenance on
the
your...
fees aren't going to be zero. Like that was the thing is like, actually, I won't say names of people like,
say it.
Fees are zero, next to nothing, and instant, transactions. But that just doesn't scale. It's never going to be as cheap as MasterCard and Visa and those rails, and be self-custodial. If it's self-custodial, it's always going to cost something. And if you want it to reach the whole world, and you wanted to do it in some kind of self-custodial way, it will never be as cheap as like the current credit card networks are. It just won't.
Yeah. I mean, that's true, but they're also abstracting money away from money. So, I mean,
yeah, but custodially, I think it's fine. I think it's fine for companies to have like credit, gift cards, gift tokens. I'm wearing a synonym shirt, and that's a big John talking point is like gift tokens is these company, credit's okay, trust is okay. It's just who you trust in, and so at the end of the day, you don't get completely wrecked. You only trust them for a little bit of your money,
It's important to be pragmatic about the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bitcoin maxis listening are just drying up right now.
Speaking of maxis,
these fucking guys here are just telling us not to do L2. Just rest in peace, L2. I don't know. I think it's like, I guess, just to keep beating that and then move on to some of Tom's work here. I think it's just like, as long as it completes on the other end and I'm using it on a case by case basis, like to pay the farmer, to pay the barber, to pay whatever. Custodial it is. I don't give a fuck. Like, I still want to give them Bitcoin. They could decide what they want to do with their Bitcoin if they want to keep it. But I tried to manage a node for a little while, and even if I did everything right, I still felt like the payments would fail. So it's like, how embarrassing. Once again, another way to get somebody to say, fuck this, is to show up and say, hey, look at this cool shit, man.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, you like orange pull them for the whole haircut. This is actually something that's happened to me, by the way. So you like orange pull them for the whole damn haircut. Then you go to pay this shit, and the shit fails. And then it's like, ouch.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let me try again. And he's just like, you buffoon, give me fiat. Like, he's like, just give me money, dude. Like, but anyways,
I'm a huge fan of paper wallets, by the way. I like the physical nature of them. Obviously, they come with a huge security risk, is that person can have the private key. But I just love that.
That black magic out of here.
I just love the physical.
That's why we let
aspect.
Shane come in, so he can give us the voodoo stuff.
Yeah, I like paper wallets.
You have a paper wallet right now?
No, not with me. But I've given them out as gifts because at the end of the day, it's like if I'm giving you a gift of Bitcoin and it's in a paper wallet and you don't know much about Bitcoin, so you could just keep the thing. Like, I'm not going to steal it from you. Like I gave it to you. So even though the private key is on it, like I don't know. I like the physical aspect. I think that helps people kind of be like, oh, this is actually a real thing. Obviously, you have to scan it and stuff, but
in the future, if you ever give me Bitcoin, just give me an open dime.
Open and dime can break though. A paper wallet is long. I mean, it can catch on fire and stuff, but an open dime can't break.
I'll just give you an address.
Yeah, exactly.
I get thrown away with the other junk receipts that I have in my pocket.
For a normie though, or I'm only saying normie because even if you give them a paper wallet, they're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
But at least there's a little bit, I think, more of a connection because an open dime is still like a USB. It's still a weird thing. They got to they got to put a hole in the
But it actually looks like here's your futuristic money.
I was about to say,
this comes this circuit board at you with this thing that says like poke here.
Like,
and,
if you want to get somebody to run away fast, you tell them about future internet money, and then you give them a piece of paper.
Yep, exactly.
Like, here you go, and they're gonna be like, "What is this?" And yeah, nah, dude, give them the damn open dime. But that's funny.
All right, Tom, let's talk about what you wrote here. Now that we're 45 minutes in,
I knew it was gonna go this way.
Yeah, well, it happens. So Tom's piece is titled 7 Deadly Psychological Hurdles to Reaching Bitcoin Maximalism. I'm going to just run through the 7 as a list real quick, and then we'll dive deeper here. So first up is portfolio tinkering. Second is cheering the underdog. Third is avoiding the bandwagon. Fourth is the sunk cost fallacy. Fifth is perpetually missing the boat. Sixth is unit bias. And seventh is playing catch up. So we will get into this now. But a disclaimer before we start. this is definitely not an orange pill piece. The assumption here is the reader has already decided for themselves correctly that Bitcoin has value and they want to accumulate more of it. I will preface this with my personal opinion that this is more of like how do I, overcome myself to get to a point where I'm only relying on Bitcoin. And so sort of like almost like a gateway think piece in the way that I feel this fits in my world is like a gateway think piece to like get on zero. And some of the considerations there. So helping people recognize their own hidden motivations so that you can work through them and obtain financial freedom and financial salvation through Bitcoin the rest of the way. So there's not like any like, oh, well, what about this, or Bitcoin's a Ponzi, or what about an EMP, or like none of that's happening here. That's not this discussion. And so first up is portfolio tinkering. Shane.
Well,
go ahead.
Before we get into the
Let's hear
seven,
some.
I'll just mention a few things off the bat, which is one thing is like some of these 7 are related to each other, so you could definitely recognize that there's some overlap here.
Yeah.
And then also these are definitely not the only 7, right? It's just 7 that I thought of. I guess I want to talk a little bit about what I was going for here, which is that a lot of people struggle to get to Bitcoin for like the logical arguments, right? And that's the first part of the article is like, there's all kinds of logical problems people have with Bitcoin until they really start having those debates or researching Bitcoin. And so that's not what I'm trying to identify here. I'm trying to identify things that that are not really logical problems. It's just like psychological barriers to getting into it. So I think the first one's actually a pretty good example of what I mean, which is portfolio tinkering. So what I meant by that is like there is a tendency among certain people who enjoy portfolio management. They've gotten into like investing as a hobby, and they spend their time on spreadsheets looking at pie charts and stuff, and they're like constantly adjusting their allocations to what feels perfect and feels right. And it's like it can be fun if it pays off and stuff. It feels like you're doing good work, and yeah, it can really eat up free time. It's something that I kind of dealt with myself. Even like I was like getting into investing and noticed that with myself. And then the Bitcoin maximalists come along and say, screw all that, just your long-term savings should be primarily Bitcoin or all Bitcoin. And so I think some people like they're hesitant to step away from that hobby almost to just move to something simpler that makes more sense.
It doesn't feel right for them to sit still. They have to be doing something, or they don't feel like they've done anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that problem even occurs too when like people are ready to like, okay, crypto is here to stay, so I'm gonna start learning a little bit about it, and I'm gonna get into the world of crypto, right? Then sometimes they start off with the same approach where I'm gonna have this portfolio of like 35% Bitcoin and smaller percentages of all the other shitcoins, and that's just not the right approach. So the ideal approach is very boring. Your entire crypto portfolio should be one thing, 100% Bitcoin.
I mean, there was a pie chart that you included that it didn't look boring. I mean, there was like 37 different colors on there. I mean, the first section was Bitcoin. The second one was Bitcoin, but in blue, and then Bitcoin, but in gray and purple.
Bitcoin and purple.
Purple, yeah.
That's
Like I saw a lot of this article, and I told you this earlier. It's like a lot of these are just mental models that people struggle with, or mental hurdles that people struggle with, and like all aspects of life and growth, right? And ironically, in this one, it's like what we say all the time: there's no single point of failure. So what I mean by that is that to tell somebody to put 100% in Bitcoin, when you've understood enough and you're convicted enough, you understand that that's not a single point of failure. It's the way to go. But most people, especially in investing, are like, I need to having, a spread basket or whatever the hell they call it. I need
Spread basket.
What is it called? I'm not a financial guy.
Diversified portfolio.
There you go. We need a finance. We need a fiat guy here, but that's what we got. No, but like, you guys know what I'm saying. It's like, it's actually, they think it's advantageous to have real estate, S&P, Bitcoin, Ethereum, right? Like, to them, they're playing it smart, but to a maximalist, they're gonna get rugged for other reasons. So like,
yeah. And this one really showcases, again, what I was going for with the article, which is like, if this is something holding someone back from really diving in specifically to Bitcoin, most people aren't like going to admit this, like maybe even to themselves, but often not to other people as well. It's like if I ask someone, hey, why don't you have Bitcoin, or like, why aren't you focusing mostly on Bitcoin? They're not going to tell me, oh, it's because I love playing around with pie charts. Right? Yeah. But that might be a real blockade for them, actually, in reality. So that's really some of what the article is going for, is like, maybe recognize some of these things with yourself or with your loved ones or something, and like try to highlight that and say, hey, take a step back. This is not really a logical approach, and you should deal with this.
Yeah.
I have not read Tom's article, so he hasn't infected me with his ideas.
Yeah, no pie charts for you, sir.
But I will say that I am definitely guilty of the portfolio tinkerer. And I'm like, dude, why am I buying secured puts of Riot, like, when I should just be buying spot Bitcoin at 33K? It's like,
you hear that, IRS? Did you hear that?
No, they know. They know I'm buying it. I mean, it's more like a portfolio tinkerer inside of a portfolio tinker. It's like, it's all Bitcoin related stuff, but it's like in my retirement account, I'm like messing around with like options and this, and it's great if it pays off, but like at the end of the day, it's like I'm just like giving myself a headache doing things, and then like my emotions are going up and down for like, in reality, such a small portion of my wealth. But even when it's like a few $100, I'm like, dude, I should have just bought. Why did I do this? I just should buy Bitcoin. Why am I selling this right now when I should just hold it in my retirement account, which is what it's for, And yeah, so I'm definitely guilty of this, even at like a small scale.
So is the tinkerer, is having the philosophy of the diversified portfolio and a tinkerer two different things, or are they exclusively the same?
Yeah,
Tom,
I mean, this is related to like a couple of other ones that we'll get to later.
Okay,
so.
Cool. Because what I was gonna say is like, I don't relate to Shane in the fact that like I'm stressing every single one, but I'm still, even though the majority of my allocation is in Bitcoin, I'm still one of those that's like, you guys know, I just bought a house, right? So it's like, oh, I want 1 foot in real estate. I still have a 401k that, whatever, and I don't tinker with it, but I guess I'm not 100 in, right? Like, I still have a diversified, and I think it's smart. Yeah, but I'm not tinkering.
I mean, that's the great thing about Bitcoin, though, is like there's no tinkering required, because fundamentally it's the same thing every year. If you've got a Tesla stock, you've got to pay attention to how much beryllium or whatever the fuck they're scooping up out. I think that's a made up thing from Galaxy Quest. I don't think that's a real element. How much cobalt and like nickel.
Just made up some shit.
No, anyways, you don't have to worry about how much Tesla is mining, or if you've got Google stock, you don't have to worry about their Apple's privacy policy asking apps not to track and making Google's stock price tank. Like, you don't have to research any of that shit. You already know that Bitcoin works. It's not going to get taken down by anyone because it's 15 years old and every government hates it. I'm sorry, it would be dead by now if they could. Like, it's over. So is your research, and so is your tinkering. It's over. Just put a wrap on it. Go find a new hobby.
Yeah.
Enjoy life. Go touch grass.
Tom, what were you going to say? Because I got something to say to Kev, but you were going to say something?
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, like, but even in this process of, like, buying another house, this is the second house I purchased. Nobody in this room, I've had people that tell me, you're dumb. Buy more Bitcoin. Right? Like, so, and then if
We had a conversation about this.
did you tell me I was dumb?
I didn't tell you were dumb,
Okay.
but I did tell you buy more Bitcoin.
Well, I do want to clarify something, which is that, yeah, the article is not really like necessarily trying to advocate for the get on zero or like all in Bitcoin. I'm not that way myself. I'm not on Sahil's level yet.
Yeah.
But
None of us are.
yeah, it's really just don't own other things for the wrong reasons, right? I'm not going to knock someone for having things besides Bitcoin, but if you have things just because you enjoy playing around with pie charts and allocations and spreadsheets, that's probably not a logical reason.
Bingo. Okay. Fair. Let's move on here. But like, yeah, that's a great way to end that segment. What's the next one? Or did you want to go naturally somewhere else, Tom?
No, we can move on to the second deadly psychological hurdle.
Cheering the underdog, David versus Goliath.
Love this one too.
People love to obsess over the long shots, the underdogs, the seemingly impossible achievements.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of people seem, and doesn't apply to everyone, but a lot of people do like rooting for the underdog, right? And Bitcoin is absolutely dominant in the world of cryptocurrency, and so I think a lot of people just, when they're approaching it, they make the mistake of like, what's something that's smaller, like an underdog that I can support that maybe has room to run and overtake it, right? I want to support the David that's going to overcome Goliath, when in reality, for a lot of things in life, maybe you're going to actually do better supporting Goliath because there is no divine intervention that's going to help David, right? So I think one of the examples I use in the article is like, if the 1994 Chicago Bulls are going up against a high school basketball team, like you might want to root for the high school basketball team because it's awesome. But if you're putting money on one of them, you should probably be choosing Michael Jordan, right?
Word.
It was like the Floyd Mayweather Conor McGregor fight. I fucking bet on Conor McGregor just because I wanted him to win. There's no chance. No fucking chance. Out of his element. Absolutely no chance.
Why the 93 Bulls? I think the 90.
He said 94. In the article, he said 95, 96, but who cares?
I don't remember what
they were all good.
Was, but yeah.
the earlier Bulls were the better ones. But yeah, I get the point either way. And that's the whole, like you said, it's like a lot of people have, actually, when I first started getting into cryptocurrencies, period, the guy who put me onto cryptocurrency was basically saying that Ethereum was going to be the one to overtake Bitcoin. So he's like, hey, you should get into this for that same logic, that same philosophy.
Yeah, it's a weird psychological thing for some people where, they just, they want to choose what's second place instead of what's first place, when in reality, if you want to be a winner, in some cases, you need to choose the one that's in first place because it's winning for a reason.
Yeah.
If you're not first, you're last. Ricky Bobby.
Yeah. But what, I was going to say, but what if, but it's rare occurrence. Like there is, I guess, highlightable opportunities to where if you're right, you're super right about that second place one. Like in a horse race, if you bet on the second place horse and you just know you're going to hit big. Yeah. So definitely, like, there are situations where something that's not currently winning will end up the winner. This again, it kind of the same conclusion to the last one. It's just like, use logic. Don't just support something because it's the underdog. Like, actually have some sort of logical reason behind it. Yeah. That happens a lot in sports too. Like, if you don't know who to go for, you just go for the underdog naturally. You're just like, fuck it. Like, I want these guys to win just because they just, they had a shitty record or they fought their way there. That's right. And it's like, yeah, but I think also too, like, people get it conflated in their mind, like looking, it's almost indistinguishable what's a dumb idea versus like what is something that is thought to be impossible that someone's trying to accomplish. Like the line there is very thin. I did have an example that I thought of when I was reading this section. I was like, it's not like taking a risk on a great achievement is not the same thing as like, oh, I'm going to go bet on IOTA and hope that, it overtakes Bitcoin or Verge or whatever the hell else. Like,
a triple backflip on a dirt bike is one of those great pushing the envelope achievements, but like buying Trump Inu is just fucking nihilistic. Like, you don't care about your life.
Yeah.
you just threw your money away.
Yeah, it's just fun to watch though sometimes. And yeah, you're right, Tom. Have some logic to it, but like back to the sports analogy, it's like that Golden State Warriors run was just like that was a damn near impossible team to beat. But when the Cavaliers came back 3-1, it was just amazing to watch. Was it 3-1? I think it was 3-1.
Yep, 3-1.
It was just amazing to watch. Now, you're right. Like, you know, can we predict that that's going to happen? It's probably going to not happen 99.9% of the time, especially against Steph Curry. Him, right? But it happened, and it was amazing to watch. And we get reminders every now and then that David could be Goliath in a sense. So I could see where that could play to psychological decisions to some people.
Right.
So.
And we've already sort of bleeded into the third one, which is very similar,
Yep.
which is avoiding the bandwagon. So these are like two sides.
Right there.
These are two sides of the same coin, where one side is like you're drawn towards the underdog just for the sake of it being the underdog. The other side of the coin is like I want to avoid the winner, like on purpose. Like I don't want to be hopping on the bandwagon. And so I use some sports examples in that section as well. It's like, you know, it doesn't really feel like honorable behavior if someone's like a Patriots fan for quite a few years and now all of a sudden they're a Chiefs fan, right? Like, really?
Word.
Yeah,
we know who you are out there. We know who you are.
You had to use the Patriots. You had to.
Yeah, we know who you are.
Half full of Bostonites in here.
Yeah. Always Patriots fan. But you're right. Yeah, that is a weird conundrum too. But like, I think that started with the whole, I mean, back to the New England Boston thing.
Of course it is.
Very biased. But like the whole Yankees Red Sox rivalry, it's the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Like I've had buddies that like left Mass, moved to New York, and all of a sudden they're Yankees fans. And it's like, what the fuck happened? Like we were just talking about Pedro Martinez like 2 weeks ago. But
yeah, so in the investing world, this is like a really observable phenomenon as well, where like in the stock market, for example, you've got people that are hopping to the hottest stock rather than hopping to the hottest sports team. They're like, you know, they're piling on to Tesla because it's going to the moon, and then next it's Apple, and now it's Nvidia, right? So they're just like hopping from bandwagon to bandwagon. And then there's another group of investors that are like the contrarians that are like, this stuff's overcrowded. It's all dumb money piling in. So I'm going to specifically avoid that, and I'm going to look for contrarian opportunities with, you know, smaller names, things that are not overcrowded. And so I'm pointing out in the article that that's a huge mistake in the world of, you know, Bitcoin. If you're avoiding Bitcoin because it's overcrowded, and instead you're trying to look for like an opportunity in a small cryptocurrency or something, that's a huge error. Because sometimes, like I said earlier, things are winning for a reason.
But the corollary to that is when everybody's selling Bitcoin, that's when you should be buying it.
Yeah. Yeah, Bitcoin can never be overcrowded, right? It's like Bitcoin is the best money that exists, and so it's always undercrowded until the entire world's using it. And in which case it's appropriately crowded.
Because the network effect of it, it's like the more people you have, the bigger the network gets, the bigger the number go up, and all the other stuff that comes with that. Mm-hmm. So you do want to pile in. You're almost incentivized to pile into the biggest, the biggest player.
Yeah, so like Kevin pointed out, like you do ideally want to be kind of the contrarian and buying when it's going down and when people are selling, just because you're getting a better deal. But I would argue that like FOMO is appropriate. There will come a time where the price continues to go up and you really don't get that pullback and bear market and stuff. And people that don't really have much of their savings or any savings in Bitcoin yet, they should be hopping on the bandwagon, because if they're specifically avoiding it because they don't want to be a bandwagoner, they're just going to watch Bitcoin go to infinity, and they've never hopped on at any point until it's too late.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're like, if you're not a contrarian or if you're a bandwagoner in the stock market, you always have the Pelosi tracker.
I was just gonna say, I was like,
you can win on that
if
one.
you hate Bitcoin, just follow Nancy Pelosi on Twitter, or the tracker.
So Bitcoin is the ultimate Pelosi tracker because it's always right.
I feel like it's always ahead, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well. All right. So be a bandwagoner when it's appropriate, because sometimes things are winning because of a reason.
Yeah. Again, just
is that kind of how to sum that one up?
Don't get carried away though.
Bullshit. I want more sats. What do you mean don't get carried away?
Don't go 80x leverage long, sir. Because the apex.
Don't tell me what to do, sir.
The apex predator asset is a sword that cuts whoever is offsides 80% of the time, every time.
That'll come back.
Kevin
I think.
Short sats.
Yeah, don't go 80x leverages. I think we will come back to that in like the 7th and final one. But yeah, all of these are just like these are fallacies. These are psychological hurdles. Like the you got to be using logic and reason, and don't let these like weird feelings get in your way. Is what this article is all about. Because
you end up in like this paradoxical state where like you're neither buying Bitcoin nor like you're just not doing anything.
Yeah, and you're making excuses generally. Like again, if someone is not buying Bitcoin because they have this problem of like wanting to support the underdog or not be on the bandwagon, when you ask them why aren't you buying Bitcoin, they're not going to tell you that that's the reason, even if it is, right? They're going to come up with something else, like it uses too much energy, or it's like it's too slow or whatever. And even if it gets debunked, like they'll come up with some sort of excuse. So this is like, again, trying to make people realize what's actually holding them back and like deal with that, because it's not rational.
Got to hit them with the truth.
Word.
Sunk cost fallacy is up next.
Sunk cost fallacy is a big one. That's where, again, there are some overlap with some of these, but this one is like you've spent a lot of time and energy and money on investing in certain things like stocks or real estate or gold, and
bought some books.
Yeah, spent your time learning about all of this stuff, and then to get hit with this idea of like, hey, you can almost disregard a lot of that because the world is moving to something else now, Bitcoin. That a lot of people. So what the sunk cost fallacy is like it's people not altering their behavior because they already feel invested in something, right?
Yeah.
And this fallacy comes up a lot of times in all areas of life, but it's a big problem with Bitcoin adoption because everybody is approaching it from a place where they've been doing something else beforehand. They've been doing something their whole life differently beforehand, and this is like saying, hey, all that stuff you were doing before, doesn't make sense. Do this instead. It's like a lot of people hesitate.
Instantly, you're just like trying to bring apocalypse to my world. I'm like, shut that shit down.
I think this is the most, arguably the most relatable one to all aspects of life. I think this is the one where like this will stun your growth in every facet of your life. You name it, diet, wokeness, philosophies. If you don't just understand that, you might have spent all this time learning or believing something that's not actually accurate, and if you can't just like realize that and adjust and move on the fly, you're probably going to fall behind in life.
Yeah.
Really far back.
Oh, I'm too far in. I can't turn back now.
Yeah.
I spent too much time following Charles Hoskinson. I got to go on the retreat with him now. I got no funds left for Bitcoin. I attend all the spaces and go to his festivals and follow him into the pyramids. I got no money left for Bitcoin. You know how it goes, Jose.
Well,
it's too much invested at this point.
Well, to me, it's like, and to use real life example, it's like if I were to, like, this is the part of Bitcoin that fascinates me more than the money aspect of Bitcoin. It's the stuff adjacent to Bitcoin, right? So it's like, because of Bitcoin, I was able to literally flip upside down what I would call a, let's just say, liberal Massachusetts mindset, right, into a completely different mindset from what it is today, right, which is maybe a more conservative, put whatever label you want, a libertarian approach, whatever label you want to put on that. But I didn't grow up believing the majority of the things that I believe now and that I stand for now. Right. And if I didn't first encountered Bitcoin. But if I didn't just say, like, check myself and basically say, oh shit, all that stuff is wrong, and like try to search, and like, I mean, come 10 years from now, I can figure out that this shit is wrong, right? Like, it doesn't matter. But like, I owe basically the person I am today and where I'm at today to being able to not get stuck in that sunk cost, right?
Yeah, you got to be able to leave things behind, again, based on logic and reason, right? You can't avoid logic and reason and just for the sake of holding on to something like that. Yeah, it's a huge mistake people make. I mean, the big one is with diets too. It's the same thing. It's the whole vegan thing. Like, you hear those stories of vegans turning carnivore or whatever, or just eating meat, not necessarily carnivore, and their life transforming. And it's like they were so stuck on that like vegan mindset. I've heard it the other way around, but usually I hear it from vegan to carnivore. But yeah, it's like you can't get stuck on one thing, like Tom just said. We can move on. I think everybody kind of gets that point, but it is one, whoever's listening to the show, like, this is one that applies to a lot of different shit in your life, and you should really be paying attention to it. It's not just money.
Next one's my favorite. Perpetually missing the boat. It's just always too far away. I love this point, and I got a second. High school.
Hey man, I was always missing the fucking boat, bro. I felt like it at least.
No, there was just one part where I was reading the article. I just kind of laughed because like you just like plainly write, and you're like, these people just always seem to be missing boats. Like, you just kind of state it.
Yeah, those poor boat missers, and it really is tragic because their story goes something like this, right? They hear about Bitcoin, they don't get into it right away. The price skyrockets, and they throw up their hands. They say, "Damn, I missed the boat," and then they just kind of leave it at that. Then the price skyrockets again, and they realize, wow, I didn't miss the boat back then when I thought I did, but man, I've certainly missed it now. And
that's real, bro.
Yeah. And then it happens again, right? And then at some point, you gotta be honest with yourself. And so I use an analogy of where I say that Bitcoin is not a boat. It's not something that you can miss. The better analogy here is that it is a gondola, like a cable car, where it's just a continuous loop of cars taking people from the bottom, which is like the dark valley of the worst financial system, and it's just constantly transporting people up to the glorious mountain of a better system, which is Bitcoin. And so if you watch one cable car go by because you've failed to sit in it, you can say, damn, I missed that cable car. Like, look behind you, there's another one coming. If you convert your worst form of money, your dollars, into Bitcoin, even if you did it later, you're still making a good choice. Like, sit your ass in the car and go up to the mountain.
That's the best analogy.
That's good, yeah. It's a really good analogy.
It's probably the best one I've heard.
I'm just thinking of someone, like, it just keeps looping, and they're like, oh, I missed it again. And they're just standing there.
Mental picture, man. Yeah. The mental picture is just so fucking funny.
Exactly what it is, right? People, it's
like a Family Guy clip or something. I missed it, Lois.
Yeah. I mean, how many bull runs have we been on now? Like, since in the 15 years that Bitcoin's been around, it's been, depending on what you classify as a bull run, there's been, maybe 6 or whatever. And I guarantee there's someone out there that has...
Yeah, Peter Schiff.
Right. There's people find Bitcoin at different times, but like, there's definitely some people out there that have felt like they missed the boat 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And it's like, you're just watching these cable cars go by. Like, you just sit down.
And then they go all in on like XRP.
Yeah, because they're early on that one, son.
Because then they fall into the other fallacy.
It's cheaper,
it's
an underdog.
Exactly, the underdog fallacy. They miss the boat, and then they fall into that fallacy, and then they're sunken costs because all their money's in XRP.
They just get wrecked.
That's why these are 7 deadly psychological hurdles.
These will hurt you bad, unfortunately, financially. And so do we want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, if it's appropriate, let's do it.
Yeah, so number 6 is unit bias, which I think we sort of just alluded to. And this one's pretty obvious, right? It's like people struggle with seeing a Bitcoin being $70,000 at the time of recording, and you know, you can have a tiny decimal fraction of a Bitcoin, or you can have 10,000 doggy tokens, right? And so that causes people to make a pretty bad mistake quite frequently. People need to learn the same lesson that a lot of stock investors learn, which is like the share price of a stock really has nothing to do with the value of the company. It also matters how many shares there are, right?
Yep. Yeah.
I just have one note there. We're actually at 65K, so.
Okay.
65 even?
No, like 65.6. Why, you got to go play some trades?
Duty calls.
Well,
gotta go tinker.
Yeah, gotta go tinker.
Yeah, the other thing that now I remember what I was going to add to that is a lot of people think that just because the price is smaller, that it has more propensity to move. Like they get this feeling that like if something is 65 cents, it's a lot easier for it to move to $1. Whereas if something's $65,000, it's going to be so much more difficult for it to get to 100,000. But that's not true at all. It's exactly the same.
There's definitely a little bit of truth in like market cap and
pre-mine
sizes, but
right.
Just talking numbers, which is where this comes into play, is because unit bias is literally only thinking about numbers and not thinking about all the other context into it. Like, oh, yeah, all right, Bitcoin's at $1 trillion market cap. Is it easier or harder for Bitcoin to make it to 100 trillion before this DOC token goes from 10 million to 100 million, you know?
Yeah,
and there's so much more than just hard numbers. There's like actual people that have to actually, you know, put up capital to actually buy those things. You know what I mean? And there's actual network effects and utility and all this other stuff. But like in your head, you're just like, oh, numbers, like whole numbers are better, small numbers are better. Like, and it's so crazy.
That's an important clarification though, which is, yeah, so if something has a bigger market cap that's relevant, the main point here is like if you have two things with the same market cap and one is divided up into a lot more shares and each share is worth a smaller number, and then, you know, on the other hand, you have another thing that has less shares and each share is worth more. In that case, it's exactly the same in terms of how easily it can move.
Yes. Yep. And yeah, when Tesla did a stock split back in 2021 or 2020, like it was the stock like 10x'd. It was crazy. And it was just a simple stock split that like really just gave it more fuel to run, and people were, you know, I guess in the stocks, it actually does make a little bit of sense because fractional purchasing of stocks it's pretty widespread, but it's like not every brokerage offers it. But with Bitcoin, it's like, yeah, it's literally everyone offers fractional Bitcoins. And that's why we just need to call, you know, Sats Bitcoins, and there's 2.1 quadrillion Bitcoins.
Oh my God.
Let me make sure I'm understanding this right. I don't understand the whole shares example, but like try to reverse engineer this in a sense. So I'm only going to get one Bitcoin for $65,000 right now. That's why people don't like that trade right there, because it seems out of this world. But if you do it the other way around, where it's like, I don't know the exact sats, but let's just say I'm going to give up $1 and get 4,000 sats. Did I just reverse engineer that logic? Because now I'm getting 4,000 of something for $1, right?
Yeah.
Okay, does that apply? Because that's how I kind of think about it, right?
Right, and to Shane's point, that's why some people do advocate for like trying to make sats the standard or redefine what a Bitcoin means. Right now, it's just kind of arbitrarily 100 million Satoshis. But yeah, it's really interesting that a lot of people fall into the trap of you tell them that like Bitcoin is 65K and they're like, man, it's going to be hard now for Bitcoin to double in price. But then if you say like, hey, this Satoshi's worth a fraction of a penny, and now they're like, oh yeah, so it'd be easy for it to double in price.
So it works both ways, just depending on how you get.
Yep, exactly. It's like not a 10, it's like 100th of a penny right now probably. And someone's like, oh yeah, that's going to a penny, no problem.
Yeah, because for the
no problem. In the bag.
Yeah, but then the exact equivalent of that is Bitcoin to $1 million, and people are like, oh, no way.
Exactly.
You just said the same thing twice.
Because I've always gone like, well, not always, but like every now and then I've always brought up like the SAT dollar parity, right? Where it's like, oh, I just got $5,000 in the future, right, for this $1 or whatever, and people think that I'm crazy for that, but it's like, well, maybe crazy because who gives a fuck about what a dollar is, but like it makes sense. So I'm just using, I'm making sure that my logic is, I'm using unit bias in a positive way, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, as opposed to some people use it in a negative way.
I think that's 100 million of Bitcoin.
What? $5?
Oh no, a dollar, like one sat worth.
I think it's 10 million. It's 10.
10 million?
I think.
I thought it's 1 million.
No, I think it's, no, that's a cent per sat.
Cent sat parity 10 million. Isn't that what you said?
No, 100
I said
million.
dollar sat, but
Oh, dollar sat. Oh, then it's then
it's just $5,000.
100K.
Yeah. Oh, whatever it is. I was thinking about 5,000
100K.
sats. It'd be 5,000.
Math is hard, which proves the point.
Yeah.
We just don't know how many times to move the decimal. That's all. That's all.
Guess who didn't finish high school?
Dude, we're talking 9 figures. See, that's the thing is like we can't hold more than like 3 digits in our head and have it make sense. And so this unit bias thing is real. Like,
yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was using it right, because once you started throwing like the Tesla shares and all that, I got confused. I was like, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
Exactly. You threw 3 numbers out there and all of a sudden everyone's confused. And
Yeah. But like in that, like, I guess ABC logic of like, I'll give this $1 for 5,000 of these. Like that makes sense to me, 100%.
Right.
And for the average person, that probably makes the most sense.
One last thing I have on that's those stupid YOLO shitcoin plays of like, oh, Shiba Inu, Trump Inu, Shiba Bash.
You know too many of these shitcoins. I'm a little worried.
I'm
about
making them
you,
up.
Okay,
I was just making this shit up. I only knew the first 2, and then after that it was all ad lib.
After you made up that element earlier, I was worried about you. A beryllium or some shit.
Beryllium. I think that's actually an element. Now that I think about it, I don't know.
If not, you should invest in it.
I was not a great chemistry. I was only like a B. I was not a great chemistry student. Anyway, so just one last thing on the dog cat token or whatever. Like, you got to know that in order for that thing to go to your target price of $1 or 50 cents or a penny or whatever it is, whatever your unit bias has tricked you into thinking, like, think about this. In order for that to happen, somebody serious out there with money has to intentionally wake up and say, I'm going to buy dog shit token today. And think about that for a second and how much sense that makes.
Yeah.
Like, and then contrast that with, oh, everybody's going to Bitcoin because it actually fucking works in a decentralized fashion and no one can shut it down. And look at how huge it is already. And nothing else is close to it in any metric or any sense of the imagination.
Well, people buy stupid shit all the time. Go ahead.
That's true.
Yeah, well said.
Next one.
Yeah, so the 7th one on the list, the final one, I think it's also maybe the most important. The title of the article obviously traces back to like the 7 deadly sins, right? And part of the reason I got thinking about this article was I had just got done watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, where the enemies are like the 7 deadly sins.
Yep.
And I think there is like the final sin, which is pride, which is like the worst one, and so I think the analogy carries over here. So this one is called playing catch up, and this is where, just like the name sounds, people feel behind and they feel like they need to catch up and get more Bitcoin, and you know that's kind of a sensible feeling. But it makes people do really illogical things, right? Leverage, ADX leverage, or I'm going to buy this shitcoin and assume that it's going to outperform Bitcoin so that I can sell it and end up with more Bitcoin than I had before. And it can even lead people to like scamming others, right? Creating shitcoins and trying to market them. And so this one I think is like, it really captures a lot of people and causes a lot of people to lose Bitcoin. I think towards the end of that section, I make a point about once people realize that they don't really have any hope now of being like a Bitcoin whale because the price is too expensive, they resort to trying to become a big fish in a smaller pond. So they're like, well, I can't be a Bitcoin whale at this point. If I get into Bitcoin, I'm just going to have a small fraction of a Bitcoin. But I could be a doggy token whale, right? I could be one of the biggest holders of this really tiny coin. So I think some people are driven to do that and then, continue to advocate to themselves and to others about like, yeah, this is the real deal. This is the next Bitcoin. And, that I think that one can really cause people to end up with basically next to no Bitcoin at the end of all this.
That's an ego-driven one right there. Especially when you get through they may not know that person that we're thinking about here, but when you get into that conversation of, hey, you may only be able to get a fraction of a coin, but not everybody in the world is going to be able to have a UTXO. Right, like I know that's a deeper conversation, right? Like that most people on the surface don't even want to get into. Even myself, I kind of don't understand the logic of UTXOs running out. That's a crazy conversation. We can get into it if you want. But yeah, like even a fraction. Yeah, yes or no. Well, my point is that like if that is to play out, which I think there's solid evidence that it can, even a fraction of a Bitcoin puts you in whale territory in the future world. Right?
It's crazy how back to like unit bias. How many people are like, oh, I can't buy a full Bitcoin, so therefore I'm not going to buy any. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. So that's definitely a tie-in. Those two there. Yeah.
Can't afford the lake, so just not going to drink any water for the rest of my life.
Yeah, strange.
To Jose's point, sorry, can you?
No, the whole point of like UTXO is running out, and I'm not going to get a fraction of a coin because I think it's worthless. But in that environment, right, like you are one of the upper elites.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. So, if you do the math, right, there's 8 billion people and there's 21 million Bitcoin, and so there's like I think it's 40,000 or 400,000 sats per person. That's ignoring all of the governments that want Bitcoin, ignoring all the companies that want Bitcoin. So probably just a million sats is going to be plenty for people. Probably even just a few 100,000 sats is going to be plenty for most people. But really, I think something I point out in the article for this section is that a lot of people get caught up in like, I heard about Bitcoin earlier and I didn't take action, like, and they get this feeling like I deserve more than I can afford now. Like, they'll know like I could have bought Bitcoin at that point and ended up with this much, but I didn't, and it's like. That's how much I should have. And so now they're like in this perpetual race to like get back to what they feel like they deserve. And that's, for most people, that's going to be really hard, if not impossible.
That also assumes they would have hodled the entire time.
Yeah, people give themselves a lot of credit in hindsight, right?
They're like self-deprecating, and then they're like trying to like fix reality, but then at the same time delusional. And it's just this pretzel that they put their brain in to, that then causes them to go and do ADX leverage to try to, I think
that's a huge societal symptom of just not understanding absolute scarcity. Right? Like, we've never had anything that's absolute scarce.
If you understood that the first time you heard about Bitcoin, then would that have been different, do you think? Like, because the first thing that most people say about Bitcoin is like, oh, there's only 21 million.
Well, you have to believe that that's true.
Right.
Right. Like I could tell you that all day and you could be like, yeah, whatever. Like fair. They'll just change the code and add another 3 million. Right. So you don't understand.
Satoshi is going to come out and say they're all mine now. What?
He says Satoshi.
It's fucking Jamie Dimon. Fuck that guy.
Satoshi. Anyways, the point is that like if people were to understand, like back to the whole like UTXOs running out, or like if Tom is telling people right now, like, you know, loose math, it's not really whatever, but like even a few 100,000 sats is going to be like enough for a person. But you only believe that's true, and you only don't have that like FOMO feeling of I need more, I need to get more what I deserve, if you understand absolute scarcity, right? Because then it's like, oh no, like it's going to get magnified to the point where these few 100,000 is going to be, you know, dollars term worth like gazillionaire, right? At that point in time, right? You have something that you can't get no more of, but people don't believe that. Like it's because
it hasn't happened yet.
I don't even know what the percentage would be. Like you guys could throw random guesses, but I would say like 30, maybe even 40% of people who call themselves Bitcoiners don't even believe in absolute scarcity. Right? They say 21 million all the time, but they probably think that it'll get changed in the future.
Of Bitcoiners or people that own Bitcoin?
That's
self-proclaimed Bitcoiners. I'm not saying maximalists.
Well, that's dangerous. We got to talk to those people. I don't need them against me later on.
Because if you were to wind that, like I said, to even loop back, like if you were to start having that conversation with people where there ain't enough UTXOs for everybody, like how many Bitcoiners have actually thought about that?
That number is very low.
And you only think about that when you start thinking about the scarcity, right?
You have to understand self-custody first, and like that's another. Like you're talking,
that's what I'm saying.
Rings in the tree here. They've only made it past the bark.
Right.
You know?
So that leaves everybody else.
You got exactly. You got these old growth trees with hundreds of rings in them, and you're just like barely like, oh, we just bought Bitcoin. Yeah.
This is the analogy podcast. We just make up a bunch of shit.
I love analogies.
Yeah, my point is that it's like in order to care that that's a thing, and in order to not have that feeling of like be content with what you got because you got it at whatever, you would have to understand absolute scarcity, and you would have to understand that like even a few 100,000 sats is perfectly fine for you and your family in the future world. Obviously, in the current world, you might have FOMO because there's people out here talk about they got coins and stuff, but the majority of the people probably don't even ask that question. And I think they don't ask that question because they probably have a thought in their mind that 21 million is not necessarily locked in.
I think you're onto something in the sense that a lot of people hear right away that there's only 21 million Bitcoin, and they might even like believe that, but it's usually, I think it's not until later that it really sinks in what that means and just how scarce Bitcoin is. Like I know personally that happened. Like I heard right away when I was learning about Bitcoin that there's a finite supply, and I believed people when they said that. You know, I was skeptical in some ways and questioned it, but it was like substantially later, like months later, it was like where you get that moment like, holy shit, like there's not much Bitcoin left out there. Like
damn, months later, it took me years. No.
It took me years too.
Yeah, I was like, right. And then you have to understand the whole consensus mechanism in order to understand why that can't be, it's foolproof. 21 million.
21 million's not a lot when you're like, how many people own this thing? 1,000? You know what I mean? Like
the one that gets a lot of people is like there's less Bitcoins than there are millionaires, right? Like if every millionaire wants a Bitcoin, that's too bad. You can't have one. Like
that's a really good one. That's one of my orange pill, I don't know, tactics is the millionaire one.
I mean,
like, how much should I have?
It's a really thought-provoking thing because you all of a sudden imagine at least 21 million millionaires all fighting each other. You know, there's how many? There's like 50 million millionaires or something?
It's like double them. Yeah, like 42.
48,
so like half of them have to die, and you know, and then it can work.
They can all have half a Bitcoin, right? But less than that because I'm not getting to sell them my Bitcoin. So like, and there's plenty of us like that. So it's like, this thing is going to the moon.
Yeah, it just makes me grateful for like, I'm telling you, like the $3 sweeps that, right? Like the $3 purchases that I've made just to sweep an account, or like shout out to the listeners of the show, but like whatever, the 100,000 sats or whatever that may accumulate from the show. It's like, hey man, like I appreciate every single sat because in what we're talking about here, like that is magnitudes more important than having 0 sats.
This is already more money than I ever made in a band. So and that involved like
you
me
made
like
money in a band.
Like, not much. Some free drinks at the bar, if you want to count that as like on my tax, income or whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean, I always give I've given it on the show before too, where it's like, yeah, man, we can become very social, like social media with the show, but it's like, what the fuck is a like compared to an intentional sat?
Yep.
Like somebody actually deciding like, hey, I'm gonna send you 1,000 sats or 2,000 sats. Why do I want 2,000 likes? What the fuck is that gonna do? Stroke my ego, right? Like that's gonna do nothing.
Oh, Elon will put ads in your feed and then he'll pay more. That'll happen. That's what happens.
That's why I'm not like here. Like whoever is it, call it underground, call it whatever. Like underground hip hop, right? Is one of those things like backpackers and stuff. It's like they're not trying to get massive record deals. If you know them, you know them. If you listen to them, you listen to them, and they make money that way. I think Talking Bits is very much so along that line of just like underground podcasting. It's like if you fuck, like somebody told us earlier, the vibes is real, right? Like if you fucks with it, you fucks with it, and if you missed it, then you damn missed it. That's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah.
But it's more signal that way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And to loop back, like you make 100,000 sats in a show, like that's going to be enough according to Tom's napkin math to take care of my family forever.
That's right. Could be.
Let me save this napkin so I can go talk to my wife real quick. But that's awesome. So
is that the list of the 7 deadly sins?
What was the?
See that?
They're psychological hurdles, sir.
We had a
They're only sins if you let them be sins.
we had a conclusion to the to the hurdles, right? And the conclusion was humble.
Yeah, so
to the article.
The conclusion to the article is that if you're going to try to avoid all of these 7 psychological hurdles, like what does that look like? Well, it does kind of look like staying humble and stacking sats, right? You're basically being honest with yourself that like, okay, I could have bought Bitcoin early and I didn't. I made a mistake. But I'm not going to make the same mistake now. I'm going to start buying some Bitcoin. I'm not going to try to play catch up with these games of trading shit coins or leverage or whatever. I'm going to buy what I can, right? Get stack as many sats as I can, even if it's like an amount that feels sad at this point, right? A small fraction of a Bitcoin, right? With that unit bias. Even so, like that's still the most rational move. So if you're avoiding these, you're not avoiding the bandwagon because it's gone and you missed it. You're not missing any boats. You're not trying to like hop on some sort of underdog, right? In some sort of desperation. So.
Yeah, I mean, just as what I said, like I made whatever, I forgot what it was. This morning I had $20 left in an account and I wiped that in, and now I just feel super bullish about those $20. I feel like I just bought the world, fam, with those $20. But no. And all jokes aside, like I think that's a very important message that doesn't get passed on. All these messages are very important, and not only in Bitcoin, but I think in other aspects of life, as we discussed. But in the like, yeah, stop playing yourself. Like, stop stopping yourself from getting into this game.
There's these 7. There's maybe others too, and
sure.
It's like, it's really hard for a lot of people to actually end up at the right move for this game, right? Which is just stay humble and stack sats. It's sounds so simple, but it is so damn hard for almost everyone.
You just gotta stay alive. I mean, that's just literally, you just be like Bitcoin. Bitcoin just has to continue existing, and so does your stack. Like that's all you gotta focus on, and that's it. And you don't have to. I think probably another one on the list, or to get added to the list, maybe for a future edition or something, I don't know, is like, don't listen to the FUD, right? Because that can be, if you've got weak conviction, or if you've got sounding boards in the vicinity of your life, like that's one that could really derail you. And I mean, well, I guess it doesn't fit because it's not a psychological hurdle, because it's not in your own head. This would be somebody else. This would be an exogenous force.
That's usually battling with like the logical side of it, I would say. But there are, I think, others, like one that I thought of after I had finished writing the article is along the lines of like herd mentality. I think that holds a lot of people back, which is like when Bitcoin is doing a pullback, doing a bear market, it's like there's a lot of people that just like, they're not interested now, right?
Yeah, it's dead.
Yep.
I think just reading, just actually seeing these listed, I think a healthy amount of maybe each of these, maybe not the unit bias, is actually okay, and probably most people who own Bitcoin have gone through these.
Oh, absolutely.
And like portfolio tinkering, I'm just thinking that just getting into it, you buy your first $100 worth, which is not necessarily you're looking at pie charts and stuff, but you are kind of making a mental model like, hey, I know I'm worth this much. I know I get paid this much. I'm going to put this much into Bitcoin. I don't know really what's going on. Cheering the underdog, that could be the beginning stages for sure of Bitcoin, where it was worth nothing and it's going up against fiat, and it literally was the underdog. Then obviously now it's the main show in town. Avoiding the bandwagon. I don't really know if even a little bit of that is good. Maybe crypto in general, could be looked at as a bandwagon, or a blockchain or NFTs, whatever marketing term for the new bull market will be. Maybe the bandwagon, because that's what seems to get all the marketing dollars.
NFT for sure.
Yeah,
especially as a creator. Like, I can't even count how often that was like, you got to get into NFTs, bro.
Yeah,
like, God damn it.
All of these are, you just don't want them to get in the way of rationality.
Sure.
That's where it becomes a problem.
Be willing to adjust. Be willing to be malleable with yourself and reflect.
I agree that most Bitcoiners have gone through this before. So, I think like the main image for the article is like this like golden door of Bitcoin and like these 7 dark hooded figures like guarding it, right? So it's like most of us have battled some or all of these to like get through there. And then and so, a word to like people that haven't battled all of them yet is like Bitcoiners generally are really supportive, helping you like battle them, and once you do humble yourself and become a sat stacker, like then we there's people start to relate to each other at that point. Like, I've gone through that too,
Yeah, well said.
Man, I have to ask, all 6, there's 6 of these guys have one kind of weapon, and then the 7th dude just has his own. It's very different. Any symbolism in this image here?
No, just AI.
No, just AI.
Yeah, I was about to say, is that the fifth finger?
I was like, I know Tom, and I know like what goes on in his workspace. So I was like, this is either.
We can say now that that's like that's the 7th one. That's the plain catch-up. That's the most deadly guy. He's got the biggest weapon.
Yeah.
Take it too far, then you might wreck yourself. But
I love
if you're
the
out there
honesty.
hustling, just trying to do it the right way, then you can increase your stack for sure.
That's right.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. And this is not one of the psychological hurdles, but make yourself of value to somebody or something. Like, the only way you're gonna not ever sell and stay living in this fiat world as we do is to be able to be valuable to somebody or something. And
Stop being
value.
so useless.
Seriously, honestly, it's like you can acquire Bitcoin pretty easily by just being valuable.
Oh, for sure.
Like, and I think a lot of people forgot that, especially in a fiat world where you don't feel valuable, right? Like, it never feels like you're doing enough. You have to work till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then you can't pay your bills, and your boss thinks you're a piece of shit, and all this good stuff. And it's like, well, in the Bitcoin world, it's the complete opposite, and you could just be valuable to somebody and help them do something, and you'll get the best form of money that's ever existed. So, like, I leave everybody with that. Tom, appreciate you, good sir. There's other articles on your, is that a Substack or is that a website?
This is, sorry, I'll let him speak for himself. Sorry, I'm very excited about his collection.
Kevin was trying to earn some sats right there. Maybe if I talk for Tom, he'll send me some sats.
Hype man.
So that article, anyone who wants to read it in its entirety, is on my personal website, which is tomhonzik.com. I've got some other stuff on there too, and
this one you wrote in November. I can't wait to read this one. The title of this decade, $1 trillion will become unable to buy a Bitcoin.
Yep.
A lot of good stuff.
Is that this decade, like before 2030?
Yes.
You heard it here first.
That's going to be the follow-up to this episode right here. We're going to dive into that.
Mega
article.
bazillia hyper-Bitcoinization.
I told Tom, listen, boost down below if you think Tom should start his own podcast. I told Tom, man, like whether it's a guy, like, you know, like Guys Take or whatever.
I would tune in.
I would 100%
Tom,
tune
you
in.
should start your own pod. Then now all those hours that you're not spending tinkering with your Lightning node, now you forget the writing, just podcast.
I think this episode is perfect proof that these articles deserve a deep dive.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like you can read them and they're definitely, they have weight and they're valuable in its own. But like if you can deep dive it deeper, like I think everybody wins in that scenario, right? There's a lot to dig into this stuff. So yeah, TomHonzik.com, Twitter or X handle. I'm going to keep saying Twitter.
Yeah, just at Tom_Honzik.
And if you don't have multi-sig, what can you do?
If you don't have multi-sig, you can go to Unchained.com and sign up for concierge onboarding if you want. You might get on a call with me, and I'll help you set it up properly.
If you pay more, you'll get Tom.
No, you got to pay Kevin, and you'll get Tom.
No,
just kidding.
This dude's trying to be the middleman between the sets, bro.
Hey, man, I've got to get my rent seeking while Fiat's still around.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But this wraps up another episode. Shane, thanks for coming through, man.
Anytime.
I keep he says that all the time, and then I invite him, and then it's like 6 months.
Burned.
And he's like, anytime. And then it's like 6 months later. I appreciate the last second dropping and the value you add as always.
Yes.
I love these conversations. Tom, Kev, Shane, appreciate y'all. Listeners of the show, we appreciate you. Stream sats, value for value, any point in time. This helps us keep the show going. We also give a split to open sats, which keeps Bitcoin development going. And these gentlemen get a sat split too. So if you enjoyed Tom's value, Shane's value, Kev's value, or my value, please boost below. Let us know you like it. Let us know you dislike it. Or you could just be a passive listener and stream some sats. Favorite podcasting 2.0 platform. We happen to use Fatwin. It's the easiest, but there's many of them out there. Until the next episode. Later, y'all.
See you.
Adios.